What's going on guys, Levi here. Welcome back to another Albion Online video. Today I'm going to show you just one build that you can play to level any of the cursed weapons in solo dungeons. And there are so many great things about this build. For starters, you can play it with any of the cursed weapons at tier 4 already. All the cursed weapons have the abilities that you need to farm unlocked early on. So even if you are a very new player or don't have any levels in the cursed weapons, you can hop into it right away. The build is also very affordable since the armor pieces are very cheap. You can run it with a regular cape to make this build fully budget, and from my knowledge, the cursed weapons in general don't cost much either, allowing you to play any of the cursed weapons without having to worry about expensive loadouts. Within this build there are also multiple sources of sustain, which makes even the most difficult bosses that much easier. Together with the AoE and debuffs this build has, clearing mobs is nothing but a breeze. Clear speed of this build is actually pretty great no matter which cursed staff you play. And finally, the way this build is set up just makes for a very unique playstyle, which surprisingly is a lot of fun. Feels totally different from any other build I've played so far, and it just seems to have a lot of synergy among the different pieces. So as I said, a lot of great things about this build. And in this video I'll help you understand every bit of it so that you can become the warlock you've always wanted to be. The build is as follows, and what you see right now is the loadout I recommend you to play in if you don't have any specs. Based on the silver you have available to you, you can also go with better quality items such as excellent. If you really want to, you can also upgrade to a 4.3 set, but that's completely up to you. Personally, I don't think that's necessary, and you might as well grind a bit and equip higher tier items instead. Now this loadout as it is has a value of 224k silver, but within that the Thetford cape alone is 94k, and you also have a mount, a full stack of poisons, a bag, and even one of the more expensive cursed weapons. This set is also 4.2, which is an additional 60k in materials from a 4.1 set. So by downgrading to a 4.1 set and replacing your Thetford cape for a regular cape, you already save 150k silver. So a complete loadout that's 4.1 with a regular cape is about 75k silver only, and you can make it even cheaper by equipping one of the less expensive cursed weapons. You can basically make a 4.1 set as cheap as 50k silver only, which is a very friendly price tag for newer players. This will allow you to run solo dungeons in the red and black zone without having to worry about the cost of your loadout. Where you do solo dungeons is completely up to you. If you are a very new player, you might want to test the waters in the blue or yellow zone without having to worry about gear loss. But no matter where you decide to do them, I do recommend you use dungeon maps so you don't spend time looking for a dungeon and don't run into a dungeon that's being cleared already. As for me and what you will get to see in this video, I'll be doing tier 6 dungeon maps from Caerleon. As explained in my light crossbow video, these dungeon maps are very cheap, the red zone provides a good bonus to rewards, and the dungeons spawn very close to the city. Tier 6 dungeon map however does require you to have the Reaver level unlocked, so until then you have to farm in lower areas. Now since it is a map, the difficulty does increase, and the tier 6 I'm doing is actually closer to tier 7 in difficulty, so to show you the potential of this build, I'll be using tier 4 armor pieces since I already have specs in them. For my cursed weapons however, I'll be using 4.2s since I barely have specs in those. I hope this will make it more relatable for you. You will basically have the same performance as you are about to see whilst doing a tier 6 dungeon map but with a full 4.2 set if you don't have any specs. Now we are in the dungeon. The first thing we do is wait 90 seconds for the dungeon to close. This way no one can dive us and we can clear the dungeon in a safe way. Let's dive into the abilities of this build and see why this one build goes very well with any of the cursed weapons in solo dungeons. On your Q, you want to take Cursed Sickle, which is an ability that deals some damage and also applies damage over time through Vile Curse charges to all enemies hit. These can stack up to 4 times and you can apply 2 stacks per Q. So with just 2 Qs, you can have the mobs sit at the max dot stacks already. You basically want to use this skill continuously when it's off cooldown. On the W, you want to take Armor Piercer, which is an ability that deals damage to all enemies hit and also reduces resistances. This will make all your abilities do more damage and even increase the dot damage you do. Since this ability has relatively low cooldown, it will be up for about every pack that you run into. Most ideally, you want to use the Armor Piercer at the start of a new pack. And during bosses, it is a really nice debuff that you can apply multiple times throughout the fight and make the boss fights much easier. As for the passive, I like to take Bane, which makes for additional AoE damage every 4 auto attacks. Combined with your Thetford Cape, this gives you even more incentive to do auto attacks when your abilities are on cooldown or even in between them. Even if the damage seems little, it is an extra AoE after all and will contribute to your clearing speed. No matter which cursed weapon you play, these are the abilities you want to use on each one of them, and as said prior, the great thing is that you can use these abilities straight away. One more item that contributes to the damage in this build is the Stalker Hood. The ability of the Stalker Hood has a very low cooldown, whilst providing a damage buff and resistance debuff, which kind of seems to be the overall theme of this build, so the Stalker Hood simply adds to that. Every time the mobs around you reach 50% health, simply pop Mortal Agony to weaken the mobs even further and do even more DPS. As for your special ability, that one obviously changes based on the weapon you wish to level or farm with. In my experience, the abilities mentioned so far already are plenty to clear the mob packs with ease, and your special ability is just an extra thing. You basically weaken the mobs continuously with the Armor Piercer into Mortal Agony, whilst having dots ticking and buffing your own damage. You also have a ton of AoE damage aside from all of that through your W, passive and cape. Therefore, whatever cursed weapon you take is fully up to you. If you want to clear the mob packs quicker, the Cursed Skull is a good option since it provides extra AoE damage. And if you want to have an easier time with the bosses, the one-handed Curse Staff is a good one since that one makes for a lot of single target damage. But once again, the special ability of your weapon is the least of your concerns, so pick whichever you want to level or farm with. Sustain comes from 2 sources in this build and makes this build a very easy one to use in solo dungeons. Your first source is your armor, which is the Mercenary Jacket. The special ability called Bloodlust does have a rather high cooldown, but heals you for a lot when you use it, and since you have dots sticking all over the place, it's very easy to proc this ability fully. As for your second source of sustain, you're looking at your food, which is the Roast Pork. This food will heal you for nearly 10% of the damage you do. But the cool thing is that all your damage over time automatically becomes healing over time, since you get a portion of the damage you do back as health. As for your energy sustain, you're looking at the Scholar Sandals, which from my experience provides plenty of energy with its focused run ability, whilst also making for mobility. One final thing that's important to mention is the passives you take on your armor pieces. On the cloth pieces you want to take damage passives, and on your armor either damage or cooldown is good. I personally prefer cooldown, but your Mercenary Jacket has to be tier 5 for that, so until then you can simply use the damage passive. As always, I will link some useful videos in the description below. So if you want to learn more about one of my favorite dungeoning methods, for example, you can check that one out in the light crossbow video. And whilst doing that, perhaps you might give up on the Warlock life and convert to a Marksman, since that happens to be the best solo dungeon build in the game. Have fun with this build, guys, and I'll see you next time.